Good morning. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C., and today we want to provide a situational update on the district's response to COVID-19. And today is the first day of phase one, or what I like to call stay at home light. Let me say a little bit about our cases. We reported 46 new cases of COVID-19 in the district, bringing our total confirmed cases to 8,538. And sadly, we reported 7 additional lives lost to the virus. We, of course, know that these numbers represent people, our neighbors, friends, who have suffered and continue to experience and anxiety. Others are recovering from the virus, and others are grieving lost loved ones. So we continue to think about them and our vulnerable neighbors. I also want to remind the community that on Monday we start a new downtown walk-up testing site. And today, right now, we have a community pop-up testing site at the Columbia Heights Education Campus. And we'll likely meet you there on Monday at the downtown walk-up site. You don't need to make an appointment to get tested at this site, and like all sites, testing is free. A full list of testing can be found at coronavirus.dc.gov. Additionally, we're making available new grocery pickup opportunities. Families can now pick up groceries from the Columbia Heights Education Campus on Tuesdays. We also added Turner Elementary on Wednesdays and Bard Early College on Thursdays. I also want to make a few more announcements about our phased updates as it relates to DC government services. The district will continue to, of course, provide vital services, both in person and online, to DC residents. And I encourage private employers in the district and other government agencies to do the same. The majority of DC government workers will continue to be in a telework posture to support our public health goals. That said, there are some updates we want to make about DC government. We talked on Wednesday about the many DPR facilities that have been closed, and our DPR team members are opening and readying those sites for use, and they'll be doing it on a rolling basis. So if there is an amenity that is not open, that should be open, they will get to it. But we want to remind everybody to practice social distancing, good hygiene, and wear a mask when enjoying our parks. Further, beginning this Tuesday, June the 2nd, the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Southwest Service Center only, will be available for appointment only for 3 distinct services, and only those services. It will be open for the first time or conversion of a DC license or ID card, including learner's permits, first time or conversion to a DC vehicle title and registration, and it will be available for the knowledge test. Also, starting today, residents are able to drop off and reserve books to be picked up curbside at 2 DC Public Library locations, Cleveland Park Library and Anacostia Library. Residents can reserve books using the chat function on the library website or by calling the library. And over the next 2 weeks, the libraries will expand the list of libraries to include one in each ward. Also, also opening today is the Fort Totten transfer station. So if you spent the last several weeks at home organizing, you may have created a lot of trash and things that need to be dropped off, and you may begin to do that today. Those services that are available monthly, like document shredding and household hazardous waste drop-off, will continue to be available on the first Saturday of the month, which is next week. But for other bulk drop-off, the Fort Totten Waste Transfer Station will be available to DC residents. I also want to make some initial comments about how we are reimagining public space for restaurants, retail, and recreation. The Deputy Mayor for Operations and Infrastructure, Lucinda Babers, has joined us, as well as the Director of DDOT, who's Jeff Marudian, as well as the Director of the Mayor's Office of Nightlife and Culture, Sean Townsend, and the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, John Falchicchio. So there will be more to come, and certainly more details to come, but our team has been engaging with our business improvement districts, or BIDs, our main streets, advisory neighborhood commissioners, and business owners on several ideas that we will advance. The first change we are making is aimed at making DC streets safer by reducing speed. One thing that we have for sure learned with less traffic on the street is that people are driving faster. And we see it all over. And so we are making the default speed limit on local roads 20 miles per hour. And that is down, from 25 miles per hour. We can talk a little bit more about what proportion of our street network is made of these local roads, and how we will work with everybody to get the word out about this change. While it may seem like a small change, we know that surviving accidents is strongly correlated to speed. And lowering the speed limit will help us keep people safe. Last year, we lowered the speed limit to 15 miles per hour near schools and recreation centers as an example of moving in this direction. The new speed limit will go into effect this Monday, June the 1st. Additionally, DDOT is working on launching a initiative called Slow Streets. And through this effort, DDOT will identify areas of our city where more space is needed to move around and social distance. They have identified existing bikeways, for example, as parts of a network that can be part of the Slow Streets initiative. They will restrict those roads to local traffic only and reduce the speed limits on those roads to 15 miles an hour. While these roads will not be completely closed to traffic, barriers and signage about the restrictions will be posted so that drivers know that these are local roads only. So we Jeff will talk a little bit more about how DDOT is preparing to roll out this Slow Streets initiative. The next thing I want to talk about is how we can reimagine our roadways to support restaurants and retail, especially during our pandemic response, and how we can support DDOT's idea of streeteries. These are eateries in public space, for example. So this is an area where we will continue to work with our BIDs in main streets to figure out what works best for the businesses and customers in those areas. We want to completely understand their needs, and we're working with them. We know that a lot of these businesses, for example, are required to rely on curbside pickup. So we want to make sure that that's part of our consideration. We also know that various types of roadway modifications require a lot of public safety support, and so that will be a part of our analysis too. So DDOT is launching an application site where restaurants can apply to expand their outdoor space, or if they're not currently permitted for outdoor space, they can apply for outdoor space. And retailers may also apply to ensure that there is a curbside pickup location near their business. So all of those things will be available on the coronavirus.dc.gov Phase 1 website. It is also where we will consider ideas related to roadway closures, partial roadway closures, widened sidewalks, and parklets related to supporting restaurants and retail. So finally, let me just remind everybody of some of the rules of outdoor dining. You must wear a mask, obviously not while you're eating or drinking, but while you're approaching, or if you enter the restaurant to use the restroom or any of those things. While you can wear a mask, you should wear a mask. All diners must be seated. No more than 6 people at a table. Tables must be 6 feet apart, and games and other activities that lead to close contact are prohibited. Restaurants are making sure that their staffs are doing everything possible to protect you, and it is your responsibility to make sure you do everything to protect your staff. Certainly do not go out to eat if you do not feel 100% well. Even if it's a headache, it's not worth taking the chance. So finally, I just want to remind everybody, somebody asked me this morning, was this a day of celebration? And I said it's not a day of celebration. It's a day of being able to do some things slowly and on a limited basis that we haven't been able to do for 10 weeks. But it's not a party. And we shouldn't treat it like a party, or else we'll be back to square one. We must also remember that we have a special responsibility to protect our most vulnerable neighbors and members of our community. In Washington, D.C., nearly half of our population is African American. And this virus, we know, is disproportionately taking the lives of African Americans. Regardless of your race or age or anything, you need to consider that when you go out and when you interact with people. Everyone needs to be wearing a mask. We need to continue to social distance, and we need to be washing our hands frequently and staying home when sick. So we certainly have a lot to be proud of, I think, as a community, because we have joined together and sacrificed a lot so that we could blunt the curve of this virus, have the public health system in a position to support our community, and we have to protect that progress. So with that, we'll answer any questions. Yes, Mark. We expect the speed limit to be permanent, and in fact, we've been working, we had worked on many months as part of our Vision Zero efforts around changes to the speed limit, and we expect them to be permanent.
And then on social media, people who are even happy about the changes still have questions about enforcement, and what they see currently is the lack of enforcement on residential streets and neighborhoods. What can you tell those people about how this will be enforced? And I guess the flip side of that are the other people who are on social media saying, well, this is just another revenue grab for speed cameras.
It isn't, and I can't really think of a place where we have a speed camera on a street like this. I don't think that we do. And much like a lot of our roadway laws, there is not a police officer on every corner making sure that somebody stops at a stop sign. But we license drivers, we tell them the rules of the road, and we expect them to follow them. We do a lot of education. We work very hard to make sure our roadways support this level of speed, though we have a lot of work to do there. And we use enforcement. And part of enforcement is that it's ubiquitous and it's consistent, but it will not be on every corner. So it's a responsibility of drivers to follow the law. We, of course, take a lot of feedback from neighborhoods, and when it is warranted, have special enforcement campaigns to enforce the rules of the road. I don't know if you guys want to add anything. Yep. Yes.
Mayor, in releasing your numbers this morning at 46 positive cases, but you said numbers are under review due to a drop in testing over the Memorial Day weekend. What exactly does that mean?
I think that the Department of Health called it out, just like they did last weekend, as an unusual number. And I don't think it's unusual for them to say over a holiday weekend that people don't access care as much, and that's what they saw in the number of people tested. So in this case, it was a much lower number than what we might expect on a non-holiday weekend.
So the numbers from Thursday are basically numbers from people that were tested over the holiday weekend? I'm not sure I understand your question, Paul. Say again. Okay, so you're reporting 46 positive cases from Thursday. Is that the result from the tests that were done over the holiday weekend?
No, the cases that we reported were the lab results that came in for the previous day. So today is Friday, so for Thursday. The curve, however, in the community spread number is based on, could go several days back.
So these numbers could be adjusted?
It could be adjusted per what DOH said. It could be adjusted.
Are you concerned that there's going to be a large unforeseen spike there?
They have given me no reason to be concerned about that.
What do you take from seeing only 46 positive tests yesterday?
Well, I think the point in DOH highlighting it was that we don't take anything from it because it may be an anomaly due to the holiday weekend. Any other questions? Yes.
For the street closures, a couple of questions about that. One, how long, for someone who's getting a new permit, they don't currently have space, retailer or restaurant, how long do you anticipate that taking before, from the time somebody goes online, fills out their application to when they can actually start using that sidewalk?
We expect it to be very quick. Let me ask Jeff to respond.
Thank you, Mayor. All of our agencies have been working together to create a streamlined process that will allow restaurants and businesses to go to one place to fill out a registration form, and then we will work with them on a case-by-case basis to ensure that they have everything that they need. But it's our intention at the Mayor's direction to make this a very quick process.
Days, weeks?
We think within several days, depending on the complexity. But yes, we are using all flexibilities to ensure that the businesses have our support.
And then on the recreation side, when you had been talking about this before, was, restaurants, retail, recreation, we're going to be able to use this space. So is there a component where people could actually, I know you're slowing down the streets and making them local, but is there a component where neighbors could request, we want our street closed completely so that people can recreate outside?
Not in phase one, Mark, and that is something that we've discussed well. And what we don't want during the phase one is gatherings of more than 10. So DDOT also has an idea that they will flesh out that may be more appropriate for phase two. Jane Recker. Jane? Jane? Alex?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. So 2 questions for you. Number one, I wanted, and perhaps Jeff can speak to this, but curious on the process that DDOT will go through in evaluating, streets and other public spaces to be closed as restaurants apply. Like what will be, your process for taking a look at this sort of thing as restaurants ask?
Before you start, Jeff, let me just say part of the process that we've gone through now is reaching out to every business improvement district in every main street. Am I missing anybody? Because they are already charged with organizing business corridors and promoting the needs of those business corridors. So we first are listening to them about what the needs of those areas are. And for the business corridors that aren't part of a Main Street or Business Improvement District, we're also working with the mayor's Nightlife and Culture Office, as well as other feedback that we get from DSLBD and other organizations in the government. And that's one of the starting points.
Yes, the mayor really said it all. Our first and foremost concern, of course, is always safety, and so we'll make sure that anything that's put in place is safe for everybody that intends to use it. But by and large, we're being very creative here in using expanded sidewalk space, potentially using a parking lane, and in some cases, we intend to even use travel lanes for table seating.
Gotcha. And I wanted to ask quickly as well about masks and specifically how businesses should be treating diners as they arrive. I mean, do you think that individual businesses should be denying entry to people if they're not wearing masks at this point beyond just providing guidance?
Masks should be worn for the protection of the patrons and the restaurant workers. And so we expect businesses, grocery stores, other places where people are frequenting to ask their patrons to wear masks. Yes, Steve Thompson.
Hi, I was just looking at the coronavirus.dc.gov/testing. And it still says that only individuals exhibiting signs and symptoms that have been pre-registered will be tested. It says that the resources for testing are limited and testing must be prioritized. And it seems to suggest that people with mild symptoms maybe shouldn't get tested. It says for people who have mild symptoms, a positive test would not change how they should handle their illness. I'm wondering if this is just outdated and has yet to be updated because it contradicts, I think, what we've heard at the press conferences.
Yes, it needs to be updated. What page are you? You're on the data page, you said? On the testing page? We'll address that right away.
Yeah, it's the main coronavirus.dc.gov/testing, and it's in the Q&A.
Okay. We'll address that.
Okay.
Thanks for pointing it out. Annalisa?
Good morning, Mayor Bowser. It's Annalisa. I wanted to check in because there are several protests planned with what we're seeing in Minneapolis. Some are standing in solidarity. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on what is happening in Minneapolis, for one, and then two, the protests that are planned for this weekend here in D.C.
Well, I spoke a little bit earlier with the chief of police, and he gave a law enforcement perspective, but we wanted to speak together about our expectations for our police officers in Washington, D.C. We were both saddened and outraged by what we saw in Minneapolis. For anybody who's watching a person in police custody, 3 officers watching while one was begging for his life would be outraged and saddened. But we also want to make clear that that's not our expectation or what we would stand for in Washington, D.C. The chief made clear what the duties and responsibilities of the officers are, and I want to make that clear too. What we recognize is that the community needs good police, and the police need the community to respect and trust them so that our communities are safe. And that's what we wake up to do each and every day. Jane Recker. Jane?
Hi, Mayor Bowser.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi. So you've mentioned that there was a decrease in testing over Memorial Day weekend. However, we reported that the district closes its hotlines on the weekends, and then my understanding is that the district testing centers were closed for the holiday. So if it's so crucial to have this continued testing, why were these services closed for the weekend?
There were services available, and people are available to go to their doctors for testing. So there was testing available in the district, and I don't think, and I don't want to speak for the Department of Health right now because I didn't get a full download on this, that they just believed that people did not access care over the weekend.
Okay. And then you previously said that public pools will remain closed. Does that include pools such as, maybe rooftop pools in apartment communities?
Yes.
Okay. And as things start to reopen, I know MPD has focused on educating people about the mayor's order as opposed to, giving citations. Are there any plans to change police tactics as things start to open up more and you see larger groups congregating?
Our plan is to enlist more people to help. Enforcing social distancing it has never been, we haven't achieved what we've had with staying at home and social distancing because of police enforcement. We've achieved it because people recognize that it's the right thing to do and that they're going to do the right thing for their community and their neighbors. So police will never be able to force people to stay apart. We have to make that decision on our own. We do think that having credible messengers in communities that can enforce social distancing, wearing masks, getting tested when you need to be tested, isolating if you test positive, will be a very positive addition to what we'll do in the district. Last week, or maybe it was Monday, we made available an application for grants asking our nonprofits who do this type of outreach work to join us and to submit applications for a grant if they think they can help us be ambassadors to keep people healthy during this COVID response. Jessica.
Hi, Mayor. This is Jessica Sidman from Washingtonian Magazine. There seems to be some mixed messaging about restaurant reservations. Can you clarify, are restaurants required to accept reservations in phase one, or is that simply a recommendation?
Restaurants who are also liquor sellers who have a license from ABRA are required to have reservations. ABRA's board moved on that, I think, in a meeting last night, and they're requiring all licensees to have reservations. If you are a restaurant food seller who doesn't have a liquor license, you are strongly encouraged to do it. Think about some of our fast casual places that may have outdoor seating and don't have alcohol, then they will not be required to have reservations.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, I know you've addressed the situation in Minneapolis, but this morning there was a man arrested outside the 4th District Station who set an incendiary device on fire. He was charged. I'm not sure exactly the charge at this point, but there is some concern that there are people out there who want to continue to send some kind of a message to police, even if nothing happened here in the District of Columbia. What message would you want people to know from you and the police department today about whether or not anybody wants to take this up another level?
Well, we talked about our expectations for police, and that's very real. They have a gun, they have a badge, they have arrest power, and their actions and how they deal with the community can have very significant ramifications. And in this case and in other cases, we've seen that people have lost their lives in those interactions. So the message to our officers is very clear about how we expect them to act. But we also expect our community to be respectful to the police. Assaulting a police officer is never going to be tolerated. And if there are problems, there are so many avenues that people can use to have police misconduct addressed. In our city, for example, we have an independent police complaints board. You never have to call the police. You never have to call me to say something happened with the police. You can call this independent board who has a duty to respond and act and investigate. So that's what I continue to say to DC residents, that we have built over many years of working at it, trust between communities and police. We work hard at it every day. We also recognize that it can be gone like that. So that's what I would say. We need each other. We're going into a summer, and neighbors and neighborhoods want to be safe. So we need good police in our neighborhoods, and we need them to be able to do their jobs. The police chief today announced the closing of the murder of a 13-year-old in one of our neighborhoods, and detectives and police were able to get the type of information that they need because communities trust the police that they were working with, and they had enough of a child being killed in their neighborhood. So we need each other. It's not us versus them. It's us together for a safe community. Yes.
Mayor Bowser, two quick questions. One, last night, were there any problems last night with restaurants that or bars that may have opened at 12:01, not knowing that Aber had changed the hours?
I'm not aware of any problems.
And then in one of your slides here today, it says on the Parks and Rec slide, it talks about contact sports and groups of more than 10 people remain prohibited. Does that mean contact sports with less than 10 people are okay?
No.
Okay.
That means contact sports are not prohibited, and groups of 10 or more are prohibited.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Just a very small question that I know some of our readers have. Now that the libraries are open, does this mean that the books that they took out before the pandemic are due back?
Yes. I think I heard a number, but listen, we want them in circulation. I understand that there will be quarantine for a period so that they can go back into circulation and be checked out again. But I think I heard that they had something like 200,000 books out. DCPL announced last week that there would be no fines, so there's no problems there. And when you have the opportunity, you can drop off the book that you read and pick up another book. All right, thank you, everybody.